this money will be injected into the plant, or the project will go ahead at a faster rate than was previously envisaged, freeze the ground to try to reduce the inflow of groundwater to enable other works to take place. But as you said, there are questions over the long-term stability of it. There are questions about how much energy is this going to need. You're going to be freezing quite large volumes of soil. And I think it shows the degree to which, in some ways, how serious the situation is, that a project that is an engineering challenge that is as significant as this is being put forward.
Michael Penn in Tokyo from the Shingetsu News Agency. Do people in Japan perhaps feel that this idea, this money that the Japanese government is throwing in tackling this with this idea of the frozen wall is somehow linked to its Olympic bid? And certainly there were strong assurances by the Japanese government that that Fukushima will not be an issue, that radiation will not be an issue for those games. I mean, do you see any kind of link there?
I haven't heard specifically about, say, a link between the frozen wall and the Olympics issue, although there's a lot of interesting issues circling around those points. I mean, while I do believe that Prime Minister Abe is correct to say that, the Fukushima nuclear crisis is going to have no impact basically on the games themselves, some of the claims he made about where things stand today were just simply untrue. He told some highly questionable things to the Olympic Committee about what's going on right now. I do think that, generally speaking, the Japanese are willing to support spending a lot of money to fix the problem because they remain fearful of radiation. They're worried about its long-term effects. They're quite happy to see the government get more directly involved and to take it out of TEPCO's hands, because if there's mistrust towards the government, there's even more mistrust towards TEPCO.
It's a very important issue in terms of how you take it forward and the roles and responsibilities of different energy companies and the Japanese government. I mean, what we saw earlier this year was proposals to reform the power sector in Japan abandoned. And that was in part because of the elections around the upper house. It's still a question mark of whether or not it's going to go forward. And I think this is a very important point, because if we are to change the power sector in Japan, then you need to move away from the prefectures having virtual monopolies of the utilities to enable more energy companies to come in. And I think a similar situation exists in relation to TEPCO. The Japanese government doesn't want to fully take over the utility, for fear that it will then have to take responsibility for all of the situation in Fukushima. So in some ways it's keeping it at arm's length, but which is in some ways not really fundamentally addressing the problem.
Cooperation between the government and someone like TEPCO is crucial to developing nuclear energy. But I mean, Professor Allison, I know you've made the point that you don't believe the levels of radiation are dangerous, but where does this put the argument for nuclear energy in the future? Because several countries in Europe have shut down their programs, their nuclear programs. This is having an impact on reputation.
Well, let's put it this way. Let's look at on the big scale. I think the problems that are facing the world are socio-economic stability, instability and climate change and so on. I don't think radiation belongs in that list. We need nuclear power to solve those problems, and for desalination plants and the irradiation of food and things like that, which would be an enormous step forward in the way that we live on this planet.
But when Belgium and Italy and Switzerland move away from nuclear energy in connection with the reputational damage to this sector after Japan, you're saying that they're wrong to do that?
I am saying they're wrong to do that. I think we have a massive educational problem, and I think that scientists, and I include myself in that, have neglected the problem which happened in earlier centuries of helping the population and informing them about the dangers and risks and so on of what they were doing. Nuclear has been treated paternalistically and with a military side to it, and people don't know about it. Look at fire. 25,000 years ago, people decided that in spite of the fact that fire is very dangerous indeed, it was still better to have cooked food in a warm house, and we would not be where we are today if we had turned down the use of fire in the home.
Anthony Froggatt, I'd like to quickly ask you, though. I mean, despite some countries rolling back their nuclear program, the International Atomic Energy Agency expects at least 90 additional nuclear power reactors to join the 430 or so that are now in operation. Given what's happened in a highly westernized country like Japan, shouldn't we be concerned at developing countries getting on board with nuclear energy if this can happen in one of the most westernized countries in the world?
First, in terms of the International Atomic Energy Agency, I mean, I think historically they have been over-optimistic in terms of the number of projects that are likely to come online. But one of the key issues regarding nuclear safety internationally is that the International Atomic Energy Agency, which puts forward guidelines, but there is no binding nuclear safety standard internationally. Although countries may be encouraged to go for higher safety standards, there is no actual requirement. And you can see that in certain places around the world where countries that wish to build nuclear power plants are not necessarily going for the state-of-the-art design. They're going for ones that were designed in the 1960s and 1970s. So it is definitely a problem that there isn't a universal nuclear safety standard. And one of the issues that Angela Merkel, the German chancellor, said post-Fukushima was exactly that, is if a country like Japan can experience this situation and is unable to adequately control it, then this was one of her rationales for her switch. Because prior to Fukushima, her party was very pro-nuclear. And then afterwards they said, actually, this wasn't the right way forward for Germany.
Yeah, Professor Allison, I mean, why should governments look at building nuclear plants? There are many other sources of energy generation. Why turn to the slowest, most expensive and inflexible and riskiest option when perhaps in 100 years' time, when wind turbines or other energy sources like solar energy, biomass and stuff are up and running, we might look back at this time when we were obsessed with nuclear energy with a little bit perplexed. And the consequences of nuclear energy are felt for hundreds of years.
I would take issue with almost every phrase in what you have just said. For a start, because nuclear safety standards try to appease people's fears rather than inform them and educate them, the levels of safety have got tighter and tighter and tighter. They're now several hundred times tighter than they were in the 1950s, and there is no scientific reason for that other than to placate people's fears. Now, it's very important that people aren't afraid, but we've done it the wrong way. And that has made it extremely expensive. I don't know what the number is, but something like half of the cost of nuclear power is associated with maintaining and implementing the safety standards. So when it is said that it's expensive, I disagree with that.
But storing the waste products is a big chunk of the price.
No, because if radiation is not frightening, you're not so worried about storing the waste products. There's 1 million times less waste product from a nuclear reactor than there is from a fossil fuel plant. And from a fossil fuel plant, it goes straight into the atmosphere. Now, admittedly, I have to agree we don't really know how bad the global warming problem is, but it certainly worries me a lot.
But in terms of people being frightened, Michael Penn in Tokyo, people in Japan are frightened. In fact, there was a poll last week which found out that a considerable proportion of people thought that more people in Fukushima are likely to have died as a result of health problems related to nuclear evacuation than actually died in the quake and tsunami itself.
In his first comments, Professor Allison said that nobody died as a result of the Fukushima accident. And actually, a couple of Japanese politicians have gotten in trouble saying something very similar. It needs to be understood that what that means is nobody was subjected to enough radiation that they immediately got sick and died. But actually, more than 1,000 people have died as a result of the accident, many of them involved in the evacuation, old people who basically were sent to evacuation centers and had illnesses and other things. Some people committed suicide. So, the human cost is definitely there. The Japanese public thinks radiation is dangerous, and they're worried about the long-term effects. They're worried about what kind of cancers might come up in 10 or 20 years. People in Fukushima are somewhat resigned to the situation. I mean, they're like, well, there's nothing we can do. We live here. This is our home. So they try not to think about it much. But definitely the tension and the fear exists in Japanese society.
You're listening to The Voice of Russia in London. We're discussing the aftermath of the nuclear disaster in Fukushima with Wade Allison, Anthony Froggatt, Michael Penn and Jan van der Putte. And Jan van der Putte, what does Fukushima say about the future of nuclear energy as a clean energy source? Are you confident lessons can be learned and that we can move on?
Well, the fact today is that only one nuclear reactor is operating today in Japan. There were 54 before the accident. And in a few days, there will be 0 nuclear reactors operating in Japan. And that's at the moment that there is a very pro-nuclear government. Having a pro-nuclear politics doesn't really change the fact that there are very serious safety concerns around the reactors in Japan. To mention just one is that new fault lines have been discovered right beneath several reactors in Japan, which makes them legally not fit to operate anymore. It has been estimated that at least 20 reactors in Japan will never restart anyway. Whether you have a pro or an anti-nuclear government will not change that fact. That means that there is a psychological shock that nuclear power is not a reliable source of electricity. Japan has to manage without. And this shock has had its implications, for instance, also in France, which is heavily dependent on nuclear power for 75% of its annual electricity production. And so the Hollande administration government has decided to reduce its dependency, not because on nuclear power from 75 to about 50%. That's not an anti-nuclear move. That's just the fear that got into the uncertainty about the electricity supply to the French economy and to the French households. This is something new, and I think this is a part of the economics, of course, that a new reactor in the UK will have to be heavily subsidized. It's more expensive than onshore wind turbines. We are past a certain point where the cost of renewables are going down and the cost of nuclear are escalating. And we are past a certain point where nuclear can still play a significant role in the future.
Just quickly, Anthony Froggatt, so nuclear energy, from what Jan was saying there, will continue to play a role, but it seems to be playing less of a role, and that other energy forms will be part of the energy mix. But countries like France, which rely on most of their energy from nuclear plants, they won't be able to do that anymore.
I think what we're likely to see is a diminishing role, and the question is how low will it go with nuclear? I mean, I think there is competing issues. There is the question of the Fukushima impact, what that does for the confidence of investors and what that does for economics. There is the question of renewables that Jan van der Putte mentioned that continue to fall in price. And there's also the shale gas question. At what price will shale gas be extracted and how acceptable that is from a climate change perspective? But it's very clear in the United States that wish to go ahead with, about 10 years ago, we're planning to build many reactors, are now building 1 or 2, but are also starting to close reactors. This year, 4 reactors has been closed for economic reasons in the United States. So in Europe, in North America, and in other parts of the world, we're seeing a diminishing role for nuclear going forward.
I'd just like to thank our guests. That's Anthony Froggatt, Senior Research Fellow at Chatham House, Wade Allison, Emeritus Professor of Physics at University of Oxford, and on the line from Tokyo, Michael Penn, the President of the Shingitsu News Agency, and on the line from Brussels, Jan van der Putte, who is a Greenpeace international radiation expert who led the Greenpeace radiation team in Fukushima. Thank you all very much for joining me, Brendan Cole, on The Voice of Russia in London.